I've got Meredith Oke back on the show. I love talking to Meredith. She's just such a beautiful soul. And I met her through the Quantum Biology Collective because Meredith is the executive director of the Quantum Biology Collective, which is now the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology. She's also the podcast host of the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. And I've been on there a couple of times. So you can find Meredith's first visit to the show. The first episode that she did with us was number 30. And that was on finding quantum health, which was really fun. We talk a lot about her journey to understanding applied quantum biology through her experience of chronic fatigue in that first one. This one, we're talking a lot about mindset because Meredith is also an executive and life coach and has a lot to say about mindset. And we were talking both personally and professionally where we are in terms of understanding mindset, how that's important, but also not the only thing that helps us on this healing journey that she and I have been on and that we help other people on. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Meredith as much as I enjoyed talking with Meredith. Meredith, welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to have you back.
Thank you, Kelly. I love being here and I love talking to you.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking to you. And I know we can go in many different directions, but this really came about when I posted something on Instagram about mindset
hmm
and really that I don't think mindset is enough. That I've been in the mindset business for a very long time. And I think there are other pieces to the puzzle that you're gonna actually have to do some things differently if you really want vitality. And I loved your response, and you said that was my experience. And I know you have a lot to say about mindset as a coach, as somebody who has been working for a long time in that area. But you also have the quantum perspective. So I wanted to
Yeah.
have a quantum health chat about what we think about mindset personally, professionally, all that.
Fun. Love this topic.
Uh-huh.
Well, so yeah, I think of mindset as it's like the key that opens the door, right? So if we open the door and what's behind the door is some type of change that we need to enact, and we just say, no thanks and shut the door, then yeah, mindset is not enough, right? Whatever mastery of our thoughts that allowed us to get to the point where we realized change needed to happen. Like that's the magic of mindset.
Yeah.
If we don't then have whatever reason, the support, the open-mindedness to take those next steps, then, it's like holding a key but having no lock. Like
Mhm.
we just become stuck. So
Mhm.
that's when then the mindset needs to reorient again. It's like, okay, we got the key, we opened the door, and it's like, you might need to look at this area of your life. There might be addiction there. You might lead to like, oh, this relationship, or oh, this tough conversation, or oh, like whatever it is. Mindset often shows us the truth because we get good at questioning our thoughts and looking for what's next and refusing to accept limitations. So then we need to be able to reorient it to adjust to the new truth that it's led us to.
Right. I think that's a great way of talking about it is like, it's a key and then we open this door and then you have to deal with what's behind the door. And I think mindset, it has its place. I don't even know how do you describe mindset? Like when you're working with
Yeah.
coaching clients and you're talking about mindset, how do you describe that?
Yeah. So for me, mindset, like personally, is foundational,
Yeah.
and I think of it as mastery over my thinking.
Okay. Right.
Right,
I think
having the ability to choose effective thoughts, having the awareness to notice a thought that's not serving me or anyone else,
Mhm.
being able to not be a slave to my mind.
Right. Right, and to the limiting beliefs, like a lot of
Yes.
work, and I believe that's really important work. And I do think that there's a place, like obviously, we've been doing that for a long time. We do that in our work. It's an important part. of the work is to open yourself to that and to get really good at questioning your own thoughts. Like just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. But
Yeah.
then you open a door, and sometimes that truth can be hard to swallow, whatever's on the other side of that door. But then there's the quantum piece. Like, that's what I'm like, I was doing all the stuff. I know you were doing a lot of things
Mhm.
and you had the right mindset, and you were still experiencing chronic fatigue. Like,
Yes.
you were still not your electric body was not charged. And so your mindset can be right where it needs to be, and it's great because then it keeps leading you down
Yeah.
to stay open to learning more things. So I think that part is helpful. But we've had to do some different things in order to actually heal and get to the place where we weren't, experiencing so many symptoms.
Yes. And that's where I see as like mindset as the through line, because there was a moment where all of the available information um, that I had availed myself of, and all of the experts that I'd seen, and all of the doctors that I'd seen, like had landed me in a place where I felt like my choices were really limited and I didn't like them. Right. I felt like I had to like micromanage my food for the rest of my life and just accept that I'd have no energy, and even though I was only in my 30s. Right. And it was my mindset that was like, what if there are more choices? What if
Yeah.
there's something you don't know about? What
Mhm.
if this isn't it? What if, there are other answers out there? We just need to keep looking until we find them.
Mhm.
And so that's where I feel like without the mindset, I wouldn't even know about quantum. I wouldn't even have figured out that, oh, a huge missing piece for me was my light environment and reading my iPad before bed and having no understanding of the physical implications of,
Mhm.
toxic lights and screens and things like that. But it was my mindset that gave me the key to find that. And then it was like we were saying earlier, it's like, oh, okay, implementation time.
Right, implementation time. So then what? What about the implementation part of that? Because I know how the road goes, but when you start realizing that circadian rhythms are so you've got a key, you've unlocked a door, and now you've unlocked a door into this world of quantum health and circadian rhythms. And then, so how does mindset? Maybe we talk about mindset. Maybe we talk about some other shifts that
Mhm.
happen, whether those are
Yeah.
mind, body, soul. Like what? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Then what?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that because it was my mindset that was kept opening the doors, but it was a connection to something greater than myself that showed me the answer, right? Like I went into a meditative reflective state and I was like, okay, there must be things. And I started to get little intuitive hits like, what about that interview with that weird neurosurgeon that you listened to a year and a half ago? Like, go back and listen to that. He
Mhm,
had some things to say. I was like, oh, okay, right. And then I went back
mhm,
in a new state of mind with the gift of desperation and heard heard that information again, but it felt like the first time, and it was like, oh. And then once like the implementation of change, I think then mindset becomes even more important, right? Because that's when our minds go crazy. Like,
Don't change.
don't change.
Don't. What are you doing? I don't know
And
what's happening.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like either don't do it or I'm going to make it so complicated you give up and be like, oh my gosh, well, you have to do this. You have to wear blocky glasses. And oh my God, you took them off for 4 seconds. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like the mind just goes like full bore. And so then it comes back to that ability to master those thoughts and notice which ones might have some validity and which ones are just like that steam of the change engine, like
Mhm,
billowing out,
mhm.
trying their best to slow things down or making everything more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Like just bringing it back, like, okay, what can I do right now? Like, Yeah.
Yeah, reel that back in because I think we can go on a ride. Like our mind can take us on a ride. And if we're not even aware
Yeah.
that we're on the train that's on the ride, like to back that up a bit and be like, okay, wait, where's my mind gone? What have I done? Like, where am I now? You know?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I think the more we practice this, the more we notice like, oh, I'm here we go.
Yeah.
And I have found that the more I practice it, the thoughts are definitely quieter, but they don't really go away. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's different for different people, but I have found that their power has lessened, their stickiness has lessened,
Hmm.
like become less, but they're still there. Someone will say something to me and like this, like be like, what did she mean by that? And I'm like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah. So
All
this idea
right.
of like mastering our thoughts is, yeah, like I don't know, just a journey. It's a long time. But you mentioned that there was something higher, different, like something that you were connected to. I don't remember if you just used the word higher or something deeper within you. What do you think that has to do with, I guess, our healing journey? Or what are your thoughts about that? Is that the soul? Is that consciousness? Is that ether? Like, what are we talking about?
So yes, I would say it all of those things.
Yeah.
And we have, I think different I've explored a lot of different ways of talking about it, but there's like our lower selves and our higher selves.
Hmm.
And one is not, the lower self's not bad or evil. It's just more
Yeah.
day to day. And yeah, that higher self is connected to the ether, is connected to consciousness, is connected to whatever people
Source.
choose to
Mhm.
call.
Right, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
I personally am good with God, but I know other people are triggered by that. So it doesn't have to be that word.
Mhm.
Right. And so if we think of mindset as the mastery of our thoughts, and the thoughts um unfettered, just kicked out by reactivity, create a blockage.
Mhm.
So we don't have access to that higher wisdom
Yeah,
when we're lost in our lower thinking mind.
right.
So mastering that connects us to our intuition,
Yeah.
right? Like that example I used where I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, or oh, I hate this, or and it
Yeah.
was like, okay. And then it was like my thinking like gave me enough
Mhm.
space to move into a place that wasn't about thinking. It was about something bigger
Yeah. Something big, yeah, way bigger.
and being open to the messages from that place.
Yeah. Where do you think feelings, where does that fit in?
I think feelings have infinitely more wisdom than thoughts.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I think if we have no mastery of our thoughts, they will kick up feelings that we don't necessarily enjoy.
Mhm.
That being, and then we're under like the double load, right? It's like we have our mind going around and round, and we're burdened by shame or guilt or anxiety or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So we have different layers to fight through. And for me, I find that it's like in some situations, I'm like, this is my thing. This is like I'm lost in a story here, and if I unpack the story, the feelings subside. Other times, it's just a wave of emotion,
Mhm.
and it's like just surrender and let it wash over and continue on its way. And that's just, I don't think there are any rules of when or what. It's just in the moment you see
Mhm.
which direction it wants to go.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's difficult to harness the wisdom of our emotions
Yeah.
if we haven't mastered our thoughts because we can't, it gets murky. But
Yeah.
once we're fairly clear in our thinking, I think emotions are basically uh, they're our intuition. They have all of the, when someone says, "Oh, do you want to do this?" or "Will you do this?" Immediately in your stomach
Mm-hmm.
how you feel about it. And
Yeah.
trusting those feelings, I
Mm-hmm.
think is the way I try to live by trusting those feelings,
Right.
which requires getting the thinking out of the way.
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking too, like for me, my thinking and everything has gotten clearer when you understand it's all frequency and it's all vibration anyway. So, but also that I think of like Eileen McCusick's work, and I've been,
Mhm.
revisiting that again of like thoughts are electric, emotions are magnetic. And so
Mm.
magnetism actually directs the electricity. So when people think thoughts are directing feeling, from a frequency standpoint, I don't think that that's true. I think what's that the emotions are actually driving the thought. But at the same time, if the thoughts are going round and round, it's hard to tap
Yeah.
into the emotion. So it doesn't really matter where you start or what you talk about because it's all frequency anyway. But I do
Yeah.
think that, and we keep saying, you and I keep saying, I think, because you and I like to stay in our heads. Like,
Yes.
as people who have like realized emotions are important, we're like, okay. But I think you and I like to stay in our heads. And when I started doing things differently. I started going, oh, so I can change my light bulbs and I can throw on these blue blockers at night and I can make sure that I'm outside or I have the window open all the time or as much as I can. That actually helped my thinking clear. I was able to tap even more into some of the things that were behind the door of truth that was difficult to maybe deal with or digest. I was able to deal and digest a lot more of that. And then I
Mm.
felt like I was much more able to ride the waves of those emotions that come up.
Yes. I had a very similar experience,
Yeah.
right? So, um, and because I will say, I think there was a part of me that did think like, okay, my mindset's good. I've processed my childhood. I've done
Yep.
all,
Yep. I'm
like,
good, right?
we're all
Surely.
good. Right?
Surely.
So yes, to be, you know, I'm just gonna, eat a relatively healthy diet and like not worry about anything, right? And then it was like, well, there's, you that's not an option, right? Like I had to open my mind to what was going on. So the, but then yes, I totally agree. It's like once I had that an intellectual understanding of why to make those changes, because
Yes.
that's for me, I would say like I start in my head, it actually dropped down more into my body and into my feelings.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a really increased capacity to appreciate small moments. Like you told that beautiful story when you were on my podcast about Salisbury Hill, the
Yeah.
song,
To like
right?
take in a moment. Yeah.
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 And
Mhm.
that's what I took away from that. Yeah, it was like, yeah, the sun's out and the window's down and the song and to just be in it. And I have definitely noticed since being more intentional about my frequency environment,
Mhm.
what's in my house, and but really importantly, spending more time outside. Yeah, that has been a huge shift. And in a way, it was thing like I had heard that ability described. Obviously, you and I have probably read 8 million spiritual books, right? Like so
Yeah.
I was like, I was aware and there was fleeting moments of that.
Yes.
But being able to have it just like making my children eggs in the morning, whatever, it's
Mhm.
different.
It's different, and that's so hard to talk about. The language, there isn't really great language to say it's just different. And you're 100% right. I read every book we've read. You've got them behind you. I've got them behind me. Like, we've read all the books and we were helping people. You were coaching, I was helping people with psychotherapy. So we'd done a lot of our own work. We were helping people. It's not like anything was wrong necessarily, but we kept having symptoms. And I think you said the gift of desperation. I love
Yeah.
it is when you're in a desperate place to find a different answer than you have found as of yet. And you can keep yourself open, that openness. And then you start everything starts shifting and then it just feels different. It feels like coming home. I is the way I keep kind of describing it, home to
Yes.
ourselves. It
Yes.
wasn't really not there. It's
Yeah.
just
It's just, and that's, you're reminding me of something that, um,
mhm,
that became really clear when there's a few processes that I really like Byron Katie's work, and we can talk
mhm,
about that if you want to, right? But what I realized is all of those thoughts
mhm,
that were backlogged in there, needing to, you know, they were holding something back. They were they were holding back those emotions because I was actually afraid of them.
mhm.
And so to sit with the thought, I don't think she likes me. And it's like, is that true? Yes. Right. Can you really know that's true? Well, I don't know. Maybe not. How do I feel when I think that thought?
Mhm.
Oh, I don't want to feel it, right. It's easier to think the thought than feel
The feeling. Oh,
rejected or abandoned or less than or unworthy or ashamed.
mhm,
And it's like, oh, and so if I can have experienced those feelings,
mhm.
then yeah, I don't need quite as many thoughts to keep that dam in place.
Ooh, yeah.
There's like a trust that those feelings can move through and they're not going to kill me. Cause I really think there was a part of me that thought they would.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't feel that. My life is over at the end.
Yeah. I relate to that completely, and the dam, and the thoughts, like, holding the dam, and yeah, and feeling like it and I think that's very common that people feel and not even necessarily consciously, like,
Mhm.
we just move through our lives functioning along, and then
Yeah.
there is but I think that's why we continue to have symptoms to tell us,
Yes.
"Hey, no, you haven't hit it yet, love. We're
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot going on in here.
There's more.
There's
There's
more."
always more. Yes, and I remember when I was like in the early years of doing this type of work, and
Mhm,
I was supposed to see a friend, and at the last minute she was traveling to be in the same city as I was, and in the last minute her travel plans changed and I wasn't going to get to see her. And I remember listening to the voicemail. I was in like a very heightened state at that moment in my life. But I remember listening to the voicemail and feeling this sadness welling up because I'd been really looking forward to seeing her. And immediately it was like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's better if she doesn't try. And it was like, I was like, there was like this small little green shoot of sadness trying to express itself. And I just dropped an anvil on it immediately. I like a thought anvil, like, nope. But because I have been, working, doing this work, I noticed and I was like, oh, oh, some part of me was trying to have a feeling there.
yeah. Wonder what that was yeah.
What would happen if
I
I allowed that? And
mhm,
I cried a little and I was sad for a little few minutes that I wasn't going to get to see her. And then I moved through it as opposed to like having to fight that impulse for
mhm.
weeks and months until it got pushed down with God knows what else was down then.
Yeah, so where how is that now in terms of like where are you with it feeling the feelings, noticing what's coming up? How is that for you kind of on the regular?
One thing that I heard a few years ago that I found really helpful,
Mhm.
from a master coach whose work I studied, she was like, "Listen, you can be living your dream life, and you're still gonna have 50-50 emotions, good, bad, like from those kind, right?" She's like, "Mastering your mind is no guarantee that you're not gonna have all the feelings."
Mm,
And that was really helpful to me because as we were talking about before,
Yeah.
We like to put our eggs, put all our eggs in one basket. My eggs are in the mindset basket. That is mastered. I I won't get sick. I won't have hard feelings. I won't, it's like, I don't know where I came up with that. Like it's,
Right.
nobody says that. It's something that a very like childish part of my consciousness decided was true.
Mhm.
Um, and so I found that really helpful, right? Because the last few years, my learning is something like, just because I'm having a hard time doesn't mean I did something wrong.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Ooh, I feel that. Yeah, just because I'm having a hard time doesn't mean I've done something wrong. Yeah, I can so relate to that, especially lately. I feel like I've probably always, but lately, like it's easier to tap into some of these things that have probably been there for who knows how long, right? These messages that we
Yeah.
took in and like feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I see it. I was sitting with a friend who was, you know, in that phase where you kind of navigating what your adult relationship is going to be with your parents
Mhm.
and visiting them and how long to stay and what, and being triggered and all the things. And she was having a rough time. And I noticed she just kept coming back to like, okay, well, I guess I should have done this and I guess I shouldn't have done that. Right. And that came to me that I was watching her do that thing where she's like, I'm having a hard time. I must have done something wrong. So
Mhm.
I shared that thought with her and it was really helpful. And I just use that as an example because it's like it can be anything,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
life is life. There are going to be moments.
Mhm.
And sometimes the moments are hard because we've done the right thing. And that's the growth that we need
Mhm.
to get to the other side of it. Um, like I'd say like once a month, I'm like, why did I start this darn business? Right? Like, what am I doing?
I bet. Yes. Yeah. Because it's a lot.
um,
Mhm.
right. But at the same time, it's like creating the circumstances that are going to um, show me where I need to grow to keep
Yeah.
moving forward. So I don't really know what else anyone could do besides that.
And at any moment, you have 50-50.
Yeah,
The emotions are
exactly.
all gonna be there 50-50. But what I love about that too,
Exactly.
because you and I have talked about, I think, before of like the emotions are driving the bus. I talked about that. Like it reminds me of a bus. Like but it's the emotions are but they're there to tell us, to guide us. So, I love this idea though that I don't it's not that I'm doing something wrong necessarily, but I can still feel something and I can still be directed like, "Oh, not that direction. Looks like that's" and it's not that that's wrong or that I am wrong. Not
Yeah.
even that I'm doing something wrong. Like my place, I usually go straight to shame of like I
Hmm.
am the mistake,
Yes.
which is like really not helpful in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And then in running a business, there's a lot of that that comes up. There's a lot of opportunity to feel very uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes. You're reminding me, I used to hang out with a crowd and they had this saying, it was AFGO, AFGO, which
Mhm.
is short for another effing growth opportunity.
Yeah, right.
So whenever someone was having enough, like something happened or whatever, was like, they'd be like, oh, my husband, and it's like, okay, it's today's AFGO.
It's today's AFGO. Mhm. And not in what we were talking about of like mastering your mind to shove it down and hold it back behind the dam. It's like, oh, it's just another AFGO. It's like, oh, this is an AFGO. Like, okay,
Yes.
let's
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Like let's
And
mhm,
I find like that because I also like I have adopted over the years what some people would probably consider a rather like extreme personal accountability, right? Like
Mm,
every time, like it's like, okay, what if something's going on? It's like, what was my part in it?
mm,
And I know that for some people that feels onerous or burdensome, like that you're blaming yourself. But for me, it's really liberating because if I can find the part of me that contributed or made the decision
mm.
that led to this, then I can do something, right? Like I have some agency in
Yeah.
the situation.
Yeah.
And I find, yeah, feelings are very useful for that, right? Because it was like I can it's like, oh, I made that choice because I was afraid of to feel this, or I wanted to feel this, or there's always some
Mhm.
hidden motive that I wasn't fully aware of
Mhm.
that, that got me into trouble. Um, and I've very rarely encountered a situation where I couldn't like trace back to something that
Mhm.
was my contribution, which I personally find liberating. If other people don't, then don't do it. But I find it really liberating.
I do too, and I think that might have to do with the mindset too piece, but
Yeah.
just having a mindset of being open to seeing what was my part in this because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
on your radar if it weren't a part of you. Like every single thing in our lives, and I find it liberating, but I also find it very like everything in your if you when you take ownership and responsibility for everything in your life, including the things about which you are complaining, including the
Yeah.
things that are really like these AFGOs, right? Then I think you're right, it's agency. There's something very positive about saying, well, what's my part in that? Or what is being reflected back to me that I don't like?
Yes.
It's a
And
reflection.
even if the behavior is like of the other person is like clearly horrible
Yeah.
and my behavior is not, it's like, so why was I hanging out with them? Why was I like, why did
Oh.
I not have enough boundaries to like stop that? Like, right. So it's not even just like, oh, well, what they did is fine. It's like,
No.
I really have a huge problem with this. So why do I keep re-engaging? What am
Right.
I doing there?
Yes, and to me, that's self-responsibility. That's, like, taking
Yeah.
responsibility for saying, "Okay, what's my part in this, and what's there to learn?" And I think you and I like to learn something
Yeah.
from, like, "What can I take from this? How can I learn? How can I change whatever needs to be changed? Is it a boundary that I need to honor because it's
Yeah.
obviously this is not okay with me, and that's all a boundary is what's okay with me and what's not okay with
Yeah.
like, there's nothing really fancy about a boundary, it's just implementing the boundary, realizing that you needed
Right.
one in the first place, but you
Which can require a difficult conversation or can require the risk of someone not liking us or can require, all of, and it's like, oh, that's my stuff. Me being afraid to say like, no, thank you. That's
Mhm,
my fear. So it's ultimately my choice that this situation is
mhm, yeah,
reoccurring.
and you're a very likable person, and I don't know if it's I just am sitting here having my own moment of like, that's a really big trigger for me is when I feel like somebody doesn't like me
Yeah.
or that I feel like didn't respect where I'm coming from or thought I was not. For me, it's like if I come across as not smart, really
Hmm.
do not like that.
Yes.
I do not like that.
Yes.
And but it can create this whole shutdown. Used to be able to really create a shutdown. And then that curiosity to stick with it and say, what's my
Hmm.
part in this? What can I learn from this? Has really been it's just a big shift and opening up but it's not easy. It's like it's not a fun
Yes.
thing to do. It's much easier to like get
It's
in my
not.
head.
And I'm remembering now what allowed me to get to that place because
Okay.
I also was like it was like I was like I cannot admit I'm wrong. I cannot admit I had a part because like you were saying that means I'm wrong and I'm dead. I'm over, right? Like there was no wiggle room there. So it was cultivating the self-esteem
Mm.
to allow myself to be a whole person. And whole people are people, right? Like they're if I'm going to feel unlimited shame over having a part in something or admitting a mistake, that means I have some belief that says I should never make a mistake, which means I have some belief that actually really is I don't deserve to exist.
Right. Like, yeah.
Because who doesn't make mistakes? Like it's human. Like that's just
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Like we're down here in these physical bodies. We don't live in the soul realm. We live here and we're gonna, and I was like, oh, it was so hard for me to admit a mistake because I really felt like I wasn't allowed to have them,
Hmm.
which is also a kind of arrogance, right? It's like, well, who are you to not have them? Right.
Hmm. Which I think, I don't know for you, but like, I think that has come across in my life at times as coming across as arrogant when actually it's coming from a deep insecurity of feeling like
Yeah.
I don't even deserve to exist, which is doesn't even make sense. It's hard to wrap your brain around how that could be for somebody, but I think it's actually probably more common than we like to think about. Mhm.
I think so. And it dresses itself up in all those other thoughts and
Yeah.
until you get down to the root of it.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's what's down there.
that's what's down there. And that's vulnerable work. That's a
Yeah.
vulnerable place to like poke around and see what's going on and feel but your
Yes.
experience has been what since discovering that?
Again, I would say liberating,
Okay,
right? Like it's
good
like,
word.
oh, I don't have to hold myself to I mean, I wouldn't even say unrealistic, like to like a non-existent high standard.
Yeah.
And of course I did things that hurt other people. Of course I did. Like who gets through life without doing that?
Mhm.
And like I spent some time with my brother recently and we had some interesting phases in our childhood and we were talking about something and he related a story where I had done something really hurtful. I didn't even remember. Like he was somewhere and I like completely ignored him and pretended he wasn't there. And um he said that and he didn't sound resentful or anything. He was just like, oh yeah, well, I showed up there as well. And I was like, oh, well, that was really shit of me. I'm sorry. Right. Like, but I had no problem like making an amend for the behavior of my 17-year-old self
Right.
because like, of course I did mean things.
Mhm.
And my sister-in-law was there and she was kind of looking at me like, oh, just gonna admit that? I'm like, yep, that was mean and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think that's what actually is healing. Like, the shoving it down obviously didn't, or not even well, and those things, it's not even you shove it down because you were just 17 and and living life, right? But I do think that that's what's really healing to be able it's liberating. It's like what you said, it's liberating to
Yeah.
spend some time figuring that out, and I d I know we use our mind to do that, but I feel like we're using more than the mind to do that.
Yes.
Whatever
Yes.
handle
I
you
think
want.
getting the mind under control, like maybe has the wrong connotation, but
Right, right.
mastery so it can know its place
Yeah,
so that we can connect to all these other things. It's not, I think we're really conditioned to think that our intellectual capacities are the drivers of everything. But no, it's a co-pilot.
right.
It's a co-pilot. And
Mhm.
when you think about it, like you were just saying, right? Like the belief that like I don't deserve to exist. I
Mm.
don't deserve to exist if I made a mistake. I don't deserve to exist unless I'm actively helping people. I don't deserve to exist, right? Like I see that a lot,
The list.
especially with women, right? They're just in a almost pathological state of being helpful every single second.
Mhm.
Um, right. And it's like that's a lie.
Mhm.
You do deserve to exist no matter what.
Right, right. No matter what. Yeah, and I like that you point out it's putting it in its place. Our mind is really powerful, and it can be very helpful in our healing, and mindset is important. And when it's put in its place, when you realize that that's really the co-pilot and use it accordingly, like use it to
Yes.
the advantage of like say, okay,
Yes.
instead of, just letting it run the show and take you on the ride and all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
And I
about
do think some people are more, like we were just saying, like we're very much in our heads. Like I'm a highly verbal person, right? And so for me to work through a lot of that, I needed, I was like, it was like journaling and lists and like just for years, like getting stuff out of my head. And I do notice and
Mhm,
that other people maybe would do better with like somatic work or I
mhm,
mean, I think mastering your thoughts is kind of a requirement for everyone, but I will say some people are more thought driven than
mhm,
others.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas and we
But
know
you've
that
probably seen that in your practice.
yeah, and I know I mean, like, the body keeps the score too, so doing some
Yeah.
body work and realizing that it's all connected, of course, but yes, some things are gonna journaling and lists, and other people need to talk about things, and other people need to do more of the somatic experiencing, like, it's just yeah. But that's what's great is that there are different modalities, that we're all different, and there are ways, but I think that the issue is to heal, like, find your way
Hmm.
to healing, to your relationships
Yeah.
are better, the work is better, it is liberating to make your way to whatever healing looks like for you.
Yes. And
Mhm.
to allow ourselves to get there, right? It's like the paradox on the one hand, we're on a journey that there's no finish line. It's not like, okay, great. It's like, oh, I feel my chronic fatigue. And like, oh, perimenopause. What's that? Right. Like we're in a continuous, like on the
Yeah.
one hand, there's always something. On the other hand, I do think that we need to be able to say, like, I'm good now. Like, I'm okay.
Mm.
Because for a long time, I have
Mhm.
thought of myself as like really like damaged and all that. And like that was
Mhm.
for a period helpful because it motivated me to do all the things that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
But then at a certain point, it was like, I think I have to reframe and just
Mhm.
allow myself to like, I was there's like a certain level of equilibrium where you can live in the world and be mostly okay.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be stuff and whatever, but once you reach that, whatever that is for you, I think
Mhm.
it's okay to be like, I'm good. I exist.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel more like that now than ever
Hmm.
before. Cause yeah, I'm still working on high menopause apparently. And, like, as I head towards 53, like, yeah, all these things. It's not like you don't I mean, I'm assuming that you do get fatigued sometimes.
Yes.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
the end of yeah. But I feel more grounded now
Hmm.
in that it's, able to ride the waves, whatever you wanna say, but that stable, like, there's enough safety, like, I
Yes.
know we don't really probably wanna open that can of worms, but for me, I'm always talking about safety and
Hmm.
stability. I've been talking about that in my work forever. That's the basis of doing any really good deep work psychologically or trauma is to build that safety and the stability. And to me, nothing has really moved the needle like the quantum health strategies. Like applied quantum biology
Mm,
has really helped with that safety signaling on a cellular level. So for me, it's like,
right.
okay, well, now I can feel okay
Yeah.
no matter what's happening or or not okay, but that's okay because it's just more okay than ever
Yes.
before, and I think that's from the safety signaling, like, that's all I can equate that to.
Yes. Yeah. I think that totally makes sense because like the work that we're talking about doing requires a certain level of psychological safety and emotional safety.
Mhm,
And when we put our body in the nat into the rhythm of nature, which we are a part of,
mhm,
then yes, it is so much. easier to feel safe
Right.
because we feel almost held
Oh,
by the rhythms of life as opposed to having to figure it all out. I heard someone on say, like humans don't need to connect to nature. We are nature.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right, right. We
Right.
are a part of nature and we've created, whether it's physical barriers or thought forms to cut us off from that. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more we can remove those barriers, whether it's negative stories, or it's cycling negative thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
or being inside all day long in front of a computer, like, yeah, it would elevate our level of safety
Mm-hmm.
to become part of that. It makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those natural rhythms make a big difference.
Yeah.
'Cause I almost feel like, I mean, we're resilient creatures. We're made
Hmm.
to have traumatic things happen to us.
Yeah.
Like, we're made for that. What we don't need to have happen is get glued in the amygdala.
Yeah.
That's like what, and really the way I've learned the way to unglue is frequency. So, yeah. So the frequency, everything has frequency, but yeah. So that's
Yeah. And like how we learn to take care of a newborn baby, right? It's like
mm,
help the baby feel safe, help the baby learn when it's day and night, feed the baby in like acclimate to the baby's rhythms. And then the baby starts to acclimate to nature's rhythms. And then we get a little older and it's like, nope, we're on like
yeah.
alarm clocks, screens,
Yeah.
natural cycles stop having that meaning. But
Yeah.
it's almost like, and then, yeah, and training ourselves back to the cycles of light and darkness
Mhm.
and the resonance of the earth. We're returning to that feeling
Mhm.
of safety,
Right.
womb-like safety almost.
Yeah, well, and because it all takes a lot of energy, so to be able to have the energy to meet life on life's terms, we
Yeah.
gotta, like, reverse some things and get back to those natural.
Yes.
But I think that's what makes us more resilient is, our circadian rhythms are what help us adapt to the environment, and so if we're
Yeah.
ignoring that, then of course we're gonna keep feeling like we don't even have the right to exist. Like, I think it all,
Yes.
you know? It
Because we're not existing the way that we were meant to.
right.
Yeah,
And so it
totally.
contributed to, like, so what happened first? The chicken, the
Yeah.
egg? It's kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter because the way to untangle that is a lot of frequency. It's about getting back to the natural rhythms and then being willing to examine that because we do have these big, beautiful brains. So why don't we use them to, you know, make ourselves in the world a better place?
Yeah. Yeah, build the world we'd like to live in. It's another thing that I'm
Uh,
like, I try to give little energy as possible to the stuff that I hate.
yeah. Right.
Why
Sometimes
is it
hard.
like that? And like bureaucracies and all this stuff. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I will engage to the extent that is required, and then I'm going to focus on building the
Yeah.
world I want to live in, engaging with people who share that vision.
Yeah. Which
And
you
I
are.
end up living in a totally different dimension than a lot of
I know.
other people.
I was like, what you are totally doing. Right. But a lot of people don't understand it, but that's okay. Because the
Yeah.
people who
But
do,
that's where mindset came back in because it was like it's okay to do things that people don't understand. Like I that was a hard one. I like to just kind of like fly under the radar. I don't
yeah.
necessarily want to be a flag bearer for change.
Too bad, sister, because every people are looking
Yeah.
to you.
Here we
So
are.
here we are. Yeah, here we are. So is there anything that we didn't discuss that you wanted to share? Like what's going on with the QBC? Speaking of picking up a flag, whether you wanted to or not. Like, I think somebody needs to do this. I think somebody needs to create a way for practitioners to really get into this applied quantum biology and yeah, and look what happened. Like, "Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I think it might be me and or us, really, you and
Yes.
your husband that need
Yeah.
to do it."
And all of us really. I mean, I think of everyone who's involved as a partner, right?
Mm,
Because you all, I mean, this is early days. It's the, you know,
mhm,
to be able to like understand what this is and what the potential of it is and what the reality of it is and to run with it is, yeah, it's a rare gift. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, but I'm like, "Yeah, you mean we're crazy or brave or something?"
Something, who knows? It's funny. There was someone who I follow on Twitter, and he was posting research.
Mhm.
I won't even say what it was about, as I don't wanna trigger anyone's thinking, but he was posting research and that made a lot of people agreed with and a lot of people were angry about.
Mhm.
And then he kind of moved and started posting research that made all the people who hated him hate him more, and all the people who liked him hate him, right? Like he was taking it from every angle in,
Uh-huh.
in his comment section. And somebody commented underneath, like,
Mhm.
how are you able to keep doing this research and posting about it with all of this hate? Like,
Mhm.
and the reporter, the journalist, he wrote back and he's like, I don't know, in 100 years we'll all be dead. I may as well tell the truth. And
Right?
I was like, and there was something about that, the dead honesty of that, that just really, I don't know if that's a high note to end on, but as other things we've talked about, it really made me feel better. And I think about it every day. I'm like, you know what?
And I
What
that
are we
makes
here
me
for? What
right?
is the point?
What is the point? In 100 years,
Yeah.
we'll all be dead. I love that because when I would get in trouble as a little girl, mostly as a teenager, right? I would I would think so my best friend, Angela, would get really upset if we would get in trouble for being
Mm.
naughty. I would not get that upset, and she would be like, "How are you not that upset?" And I was like, "'Cause 100 years from now, nobody will know. Like, we will be dead
Oh my god.
and nobody will know." So that comment makes me so happy because there are days that I'm like, "What are we doing?" The comment
Yes.
like, I don't even wanna go into the comments because they upset me. But when it's like, you're like, "100 years from now, we'll all be dead, and
Yeah.
we might as well tell the truth as
Yeah.
best we can right now." So I
Yes.
love that.
The truth as we know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess, back to what we were talking about earlier, if we were all deep down feeling like we don't deserve to exist, it's like, okay, once you are like, I do deserve to exist. I'm here. Then what? Like, I don't know.
Then what?
Okay.
Then what? I think
Life
yeah.
has some ideas.
But I think people are tired. I'm not gonna speak for everyone, but I know for me, like, I'm really tired of the fear to not
Yeah.
step into my gifts, um, for whatever because I guess deep down, it's like, do I really have the right to exist? Do I deserve to exist? And if you,
Yeah.
like, step out of that into, well, if I do have the right to exist because I am here, then what then? Like, then what the
Yeah.
possibilities just feel much more expansive. So, and there's nothing I love more than watching people stand in confidence in their own gifts. I just think that's amazing to watch and witness. And I
I
believe
agree.
we're all capable of that. And you know what I'm going to say? That's the light. Like that's
Yes.
tending to the light and then shining that light that you already are. I mean, we are light. You don't have to look for it. We already
Yes.
are it. Yeah. So,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we literally create light inside our bodies and we spiritually create light. And
mhm.
yeah, y- yeah, that old saying, like, we're not afraid of the darkness, we're afraid of the light.
Mm.
And that may be why we hold on to feeling like we don't deserve to exist, because if we did deserve to exist, what would our existence mean?
Right. Oh, wow. We have to talk
Woo!
I know, we could go
I have no answer to that,
I
so
don't
let's
either,
just
but
wrap
it
it
just
up.
seems so hopeful and powerful and exciting. So, I'm excited to just be here and see what happens and be a part of, like you said, just do what I can do to exist. Or maybe that was before we started recording. Like, I want to be here and focus on the things where I can hopefully make a difference and contribute to the light.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. Woohoo.
Woohoo!
Well, thank you, Meredith,
Thank
for
you,
being
Kelly.
here and
Thanks
for
for having me.
taking the time. I
And
absolutely love it. Every time we have a conversation, not even really sure where we're going, but we
I
have
know
such a good
it's
time.
fun. Yes.
Yeah. So,
Which reminds me, you've been on my podcast a couple times
yeah.
because your next one's going to be up by the time this goes up.
Yeah.
So everyone should go listen to Kelly talk about voltage and anxiety. It's really good.
I don't even remember. I just remember I had a like little shame attack after that one. So I had to circle back to you and say, and you were like, no, all in your head.
Mhm.
Speaking of
Yeah.
mindset. But so I'm excited to listen back to it because I think it'll be fun to listen back to it. Yeah. And everybody can go over there. And you've been on the show too. So people can go listen to you and the Quantum Biology Collective. People can check that out. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meredith.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.